Okay, so our friend Richard Wolff was on with Jamal Thomas, who has a political channel, a good channel. You should subscribe to him. But they were discussing tariffs, and Professor Wolff mentions that he says that none of his students knew what it was, and that people don't know, Americans don't know what a tariff is, and they can, it's sort of, Trump is confusing the situation by calling it a tariff because Americans are such in economic turmoil that they would never go for it. Interestingly, I've known what a tariff is, I think, since I was 13 years old. I think we covered it at middle school and high school to an extent. Now, I knew it was on goods going from one country to another, but I was under the impression that the exporter paid the tariff. It's actually the importer. Well, I don't. I actually think Uncle Sam doesn't care. Just the tax is going to be paid, so the exporter just passes it on to the importer, and that's how it goes. I didn't realize that element, but I knew it was a tax on goods moving from one country to another. We want to like that was like nailed into our brains, I think. So I find it's something I haven't heard in a very long time. I know Trump likes him because he sort of idealizes William McKinley, who enacted tariffs, I think, as a member of Congress, more so than when he was president. But I'll let you enjoy. Pleasure.
When he is the one who is creating all sorts of havoc in the market.
Good. I'm glad you asked. And for once, it's easy to answer the question. Everything that Mr. Trump is doing is endangering the economic situation for most people in the United States. And let me go through very quickly. If you put a tariff on everything, a tariff is a tax. It's just a name of a particular kind of tax. And it is most like a sales tax. You know, if you go into the store and you buy a shirt, they'll tell you, okay, the shirt costs $15. And here's the sales tax on top of that. And if you add the sales tax, you're going to be out $17.11 to get that $15 shirt. So for you, for all practical purposes, it's a $17 shirt, not a $15 shirt. So if Mr. Trump imposes a tariff, which is a tax on everything that comes into the United States from the rest of the world, he's simply adding a sales tax, which he wouldn't dare do because the American people are in economic difficulties where this is the last thing on earth they would want or would support. But by calling it a tariff, he fools half the population because they don't know what that is. No one has ever taught it to them. It's not their fault. It's not part of the curriculum in our school to teach this sort of stuff. My students in the university don't know what it means. I have to explain it to them. But that's what it is. It's a tax. And for a population that is already straining, more than half the American people cannot come up with $400 for an emergency. They just don't have it. The only way they can get that money is by really cutting back on the food or the health care they get, you know, basics of a decent life. So he can't do what he wants to do by honestly calling it a tax. He calls it a tariff, and it's hurting the population. It's going to drive our economy down because when the tariff raises the price of everything, and let's remember, we as a country are more dependent on stuff coming in from the outside than at any other time since we were a colony of Great Britain, 100 years, 200, 300 years ago. So, I give an example. You got up this morning. You probably had a cup of coffee. Coffee comes from outside the United States, right? And maybe, like me, you put sugar in your coffee. Well, the sugar comes in from outside. We don't produce the sugar that we consume. And the cup probably was made in China, and the silverware was made either in Bangladesh. Before you're done, you can't turn around. This is going to hurt your pocketbook. And we are, as a people, going to buy less stuff because the money we have, right, it's not going up by 10%. If we got an increase in our wages by 10%, we could pay a 10% increase in our prices, and we wouldn't be better off, but we wouldn't be worse off. But 99% of us aren't getting 10% increase this year. That's not happening nowhere. So in fact, it is going to reduce what the people can buy, and that means other people are going to lose their jobs because less goods are being purchased. So long story short, the tariff wars threaten us with two things we don't want: a cutback in jobs and work because people can't afford, and an inflation, or rising prices. And when you have those two things together, economics has a word: stagflation. The combination of stagnation, no job growth, in fact, you losing jobs, and rising prices. And as if that weren't enough, we had the crazy Elon Musk firing hundreds of thousands of public employees, make the whole situation worse. Okay, so that's the setting. What does Mr. Trump need? He needs some offset. He needs something to happen that will not allow what I just said to play out. Here comes Mr. Powell. If he can drop the interest rates, bring them way down, it'll make it cheaper for companies to borrow and for individuals. If you drop the interest rates, for example, the credit card company, if you have one, will lower the amount of interest they charge on your outstanding balance. All right? If you need to buy a car, the monthly payment for that car will be lower if the interest rates are reduced. Right? Your landlord will have less pressure to squeeze you on the rent if the interest he has to pay is lower. So Mr. Trump wants to come in there and get this head of the Federal Reserve to help him in his political pickle that he brought on himself. That's what he wants. And Mr. Powell